All right, let's pick this 420 transaxle apart real quick. What we're going to do is we're going to go over some differences that you'll see in the various transaxles. Also some differences on this one. So what I'm going to start with is obviously this came, well, not obviously because you don't know that yet, but this came out of a 420 if you're watching this video for the first time. So it does have the differential lock and it is a 2-speed. Now, what is missing from what you're seeing right here is the linkages for the diff lock and the 2-speed, which if you look very carefully on this transaxle, you will see this pin right here and this pin right here behind that bracket. This is the differential lock. This is the 2-speed. So basically it would be pressed in or neutral and then out. So what we're going to do is over the next either this video or 2 videos, we're going to take this entire thing apart and we will go from there. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the tires because one of the things I want to show you about the tires is these are actually 2 different rims on this machine, and probably due to one was cracked or something along those lines. Also some very specific things that you will see when it comes to the pump on the 420s, 430s compared to the 318. So let me get the camera set up and we'll get the tires off. All right, to get the tires off, 15 millimeter socket. Oops, wrong way. Oh. There's one. Now what I like to do when I get the lug nuts off is I actually like to put them back in. That way I don't lose them and I know exactly what machine I'm dealing with here. Because depending on how many, if you have multiple machines, your lug nuts may be metric or they may be imperial or standard. So it really depends. These are probably imperial. I just I've always used a 16 millimeter. Right? I think I said 15 earlier. There's both my tires, and I will put these other lug nuts in and we'll show you the differences between the 2. So here are 2 rim types, if you can tell the difference. So we have the more traditional style kind of dished rim. I think it's by ECW. And then in the early 80s, Deere switched manufacturers. I don't know why. They also did it in the 70s with the 140, and you ended up with these flat rims. The only problem, and these were, I think, marketed as heavy-duty rims or something like that, but the only problem is they crack, or they have a tendency to crack. And typically they'll crack somewhere in here. I would figure at this point, if they're not cracked, they're not going to crack. But this would be your more traditional rim that you would see on the 420, 430s. So anyway, let's go back over here to the transaxle now that it's out. There's a couple different parts to the transaxle. So you have your Sunstrand 15U pump. This was the pump that Deere used basically from 1971 up through 72. They put it in the 140 in 71 or 72. I can't remember off the top of my head. And they basically use the same 15U pump straight up through the end of the 318 or the 3400 series in 1992. So lots and lots and lots of usage of these. I actually, when I lived in Iowa, I lived near Sour Danfoss, And I actually, the first 110 I ever purchased was from an engineer that worked there. And he said that these pumps right here were designed in the 60s, and probably one of the best designs that they have ever come up with in terms of a pump. And they're putting them on 40, 50 horsepower engines now, and getting, you know, they're still making them, or at least they were at the time. So now one of the interesting things that you'll note with the 400 series, not the 300 series, but the 400 series, is the 400 series will not have check valves in the top, or at least not with not check valves that you can depress. That is because the 2-speed transaxle on the 400 series you could put in neutral, which I have just put in a different speed and I can't get it out. But anyway, so the neutral, that's how you would roll the machine rather than depressing the check valves with the arm that's underneath the tractor like you would on the 300 series. So that is one difference. You can always tell if the transaxle came out of a 400 series, or the transmission came out of a 400 series without those two check valves. Now, interestingly enough, there's two styles, well, really kind of three styles of this transaxle, or this transmission here. The 140s and the early 300 series, so 312s, 317s, up through until the 318 came out. These were just roll pin shafts, and then when the 318 came out, they went to the spline shafts. So if you're buying a pump like this, and a transmission pump, and you're looking online, but pay close attention, because sometimes what people will do is they will just list all the machines, but the shaft is in fact different. Just kind of a word to the wise there. This whole transmission right here, the pump, and we'll actually break down this pump in a future video. This is basically all the fluid is here. The fluid is picked up from the transaxle or the differential, depending on how you want to say it. The pump here is fastened to the differential based on 4 bolts, 2 on each side, and it's basically just a gear drive in there to the differential. So if you cannot just twist your pump here, and I can't do it by hand, you cannot just twist your pump there and have your wheels turn. It's just not possible. This differential right here, pretty bomb-proof differential, really good track record. It is a Tecumseh project. It's a Peerless product that was made by Tecumseh. Deere did have the exclusive rights on this transaxle, at least for the first year of 318 production. I think I've gone over that in a past video, where they make the fact that this was an exclusive Deere product because they worked with Tecumseh to design it. Now there's two other differences that I want to talk about, aside from the fact, well, not really differences, but this transaxle, or this differential right here, the only thing different between this and a 318 is the fact that it has the 2-speed gears and it has a diff lock in it. Other than that, they're identical. So, you know, if you're trying to pinch pennies and you got a 420 or something that needs a new rear end, the only thing you need to do, aside from replace the axles, which I'll go over here in just a second, is to basically drop a 300 series differential in there. You lose a 2-speed in the diff lock, but, you know, if you're, you can pick up 300 series differentials for 50 bucks, whereas, you know, these are going to run you several $100 depending on how you're buying them. The only other difference for the 300 versus 400 series is the axles and the axle tubes themselves. The axles on the 400 series are longer than the 300 series. So that's another thing to watch out for when you start looking for parts and stuff. You know, I can't remember how much longer they are, but they're slightly longer. I think they're an inch longer for the 400 series. And so a lot of times the 400 series has somewhat of a history of actually breaking axle shafts, because I guess they're just long enough, just like the F series, like the F935s and stuff, they're known to break their axles, which the F series, or the front mount mowers, basically have this same style of differential, just basically turned around backwards, same style pump and everything. And so anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to take the transmission off. Actually, I'm going to clean up the outside first because it's really dirty. But we're going to take the transmission pump off, and then we're going to take the axles off. And then after we take the axles off, we might get into the brake system. I'm not sure, but that's what we're going to do right now. But anyway, I'll get set up and we'll plow forward. I'll clean it up before we do too much more. Well, I'm getting my education expense in on this one. You see anything funny? I'll clue you in. It's the fact that this is dangling here. So, and I don't know why I didn't think about this before, but this boss right here on the transaxle case is busted. For some reason, I think I knew that when I bought it, and I forgot about it. Because I remember the early 80s 400 and 300 series, they were bolted on both sides, and so when they flexed, they had a tendency to A, break frames, and B, bust the ears off of the transaxle, which this one has done. So that's rather disappointing. Now I've got a couple ways I could proceed. Obviously, the pump is not any good because of the wear in the shaft here. And then now this piece right here is not good. I do have a 300 series sitting outside that I could potentially rob the case off of. It's a 318 that I took apart a while back. I just don't know. Can't remember if I just left the transaxle open or not, or if the transaxle's on there. I may have to go look at it. But I think I can take that case off of this one and just replace it with the one on the 318. I may have to take a couple plugs out and stuff like that and get some seals. Certainly see if I can source those. I think that's where we're going to stop for this video. I will go ahead and get, well, at least I'll stop on that, and that'll be probably a later project to do because I've got to dig the 318 out of the snow. I sure hope that normally when I put them outside like that, I do provide some type of protection for the transaxle, but I can't remember. So I'll have to check on that. But I do want to go ahead and get the pump off. And so I'm going to go ahead. I believe these are 13 millimeter. I can't remember. I think they're 13 millimeter. So I'm going to go ahead and pop those off, and we'll pop that pump off of there. And then we've got a pump that we can take apart for the rest of the video, or the next video. I was incorrect. It's a 9/16. I knew that. Sorry for the loud sound. Now what I've got to do is take this hose clamp off first. And yes, you will spill when you do this. And sometimes you can just leave it on there and then you can pull it off when you pull it out. But I'm going to go ahead and, let's see here, that's loose. Yeah. We'll go ahead and loosen these up. Now, if you saw that rotate forward ever so brief or ever so much, it is going to kind of stick in there for a few minutes, just like that. Now, what we have to do is just lift it up out of there, and you try not to get any dirt or debris on the rest of that. And now we can take and try to get our hose off. Problem is these hoses have been on here for 20-25 years, and so half the time I just end up cutting them off. I can't believe there's some people out there that actually try to sell them, which to me is just kind of a disgrace. You're selling a 20-some-odd-year-old hose. Not quite. It does have a spring in it to keep the form, but there is our pump right there. Right there. And so that's what we will take apart in the coming videos. So now you can see down in the transaxle. Let's see if we can see the shifter in there. No, I can't get it pulled out by myself or without a pair of pliers. So shifter's in there. Don't want to get my dirty hands in there, but if you look down at the tip of my finger, there's a little shift collar, and that's what moves everything over to shift the gears. I'll show you all that when we take off the side of the transaxle and whatnot. I'll have to dig down in the technical manual to see what kind of fixture or anything like that they would have to do that. So I'll work on that here in the next couple weeks or so. That way we can work on getting that all taken apart and fixed up. And who knows, maybe I'll drop, once I get that replaced, I'll put it into 322, because we haven't done anything with the 322 yet. It's still sitting back there. So anyway, I think that's it for this video. Later videos, we'll take apart that pump and we'll explore how all the fluids go through there. And then much later, in a couple, probably well over a month, we'll work on taking apart that transaxle. This differential. I'm sorry, my terms are all messed up in this video. We'll take apart this differential and replace we will replace that side right there. Fortunately, it's that side. It's not the main case, so not too big a deal there if I can source the seals and stuff like that. What Deere did later is they actually dropped, I think, this bolt over here on the boss there, and I'm trying to think. Let me go see if I can find that in another machine, and you can see where they dropped it off on later units. All right, we're going to see if I can do this. I've got these machines are not in a good place. So there's that shoulder bolt right there on one side, and hopefully, and I can't see this, I'll have to look at the video if it's there on the other side. So I don't think it should be on this machine, but it certainly solved the problem of ripping off those ears on the differential. So I'll review the video and make sure that's the case.